So did you see that bear versus meme thing that was
Yes.
going around last week?
I
mean,
yeah.
it's connected, I think, because a lot of men were offended by the results of that question. I guess there was a woman on TikTok who went around and asked other young women, like, who would you rather encounter in the woods, a bear or a man? And I think most, if not all, of the women chose bear, and these men were making fun of them, and like, you know, I don't know. The meme itself became a bunch of other memes mocking
great.
all of these women, which, like, and I understand both sides of things. One side being like, okay, encountering a bear in the woods would be really, 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 really scary. And I think that women who are responding and saying they'd rather encounter a bear in the woods than a man don't understand what it would be like to encounter a bear in the woods. But
well, my first question was, what kind of bear? Because
yes, I know. If it's a black bear, then it doesn't really matter.
If it's a
bear,
black
it really matters.
Black bear, definitely bear. Like, hands down, 100%. Like, no question. I don't have to think about it for more than an instant.
Yeah.
I would rather run into a random black bear than a random male I don't know in the woods. I feel safer with that. Grizzly, probably 50-50. I'm not sure with the grizzly, they're really unpredictable, and you can shoot them 5 times and they're still coming at you. And but black bear, totally. I mean, I've run into many black bears, and I have not really been afraid. I luckily haven't, like, I'm not a runner. The people I know who've been hurt by black bears have run between a black bear and her cubs. But if you're just walking, that's not going to happen. Like, the bear will get to her cubs.
Gotcha. Okay, I get it.
Yeah. And bears are just, I mean, I don't say they'll never bother you. Like, I do know stories of, like, bears, people camping and having, like, candy in the tent, who've had bears, like, bother their tent or even harm people.
Really scared.
Totally. Yeah. I had a bear batting at my tent one night when I was camping, and it was really intense. I was, like, banging on pots and shining a flashlight, but it was still, oh my God, like, if there had been a man bothering my tent at night, that would have been more frightening.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's it. The thing is that it's like, I think men are like, well, like, most men that you encounter in the woods aren't going to be dangerous, and probably would even be helpful maybe if you were in a circumstance where you encountered a bear in the woods, which is true. But if you happen to encounter a man who was dangerous, then that would be like a million times scarier, I think, than encountering a bear in the woods, because there would really be nothing you could do about it. And with a bear, I guess it's not an ideal question, because I would be really scared if I encountered a bear in the woods. Like, if I'm in the woods, if I'm, like, in the deep woods alone, like, I would be very nervous about cougars and bears. But if I'm kind of alone, like, if I'm in a cabin in the woods alone at night, I'm not scared of a bear. I'm scared of a man.
Exactly. And it's okay. Somebody, Pretty Weird Duck, just said, if the man outside your tent was a meth addict hunting for his fix, yikes. Like, no, if it's any man who knows a woman is camping in a tent alone and is bothering my tent, I'm almost, like, less afraid of him if it's a meth addict than if it's, like, an intentional sex perp or violent guy. Like, that's terrifying, right? It's a man bothering the place coming around to where you're sleeping in the woods is terrifying.
Yeah.
There's a whole book about this very situation, Wild by Cheryl Strayed. Have you read that book?
I have.
So good.
Yes.
And it's so amazing. And she hikes the Pacific Coast Trail by herself as a young woman. And every fraught situation that she has involves creepy men.
Yeah.
None of it's about nature or even the terrain or the elements. That's not what was a threat to her. The times she was in threatening situations, every single time it was human males that were making her scared.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it didn't just happen once on her trek. Yeah.
So yeah, and I think the point is that both in the situation of like, accept trans women as women, and in the situation of thinking about whether you'd rather encounter a bear or a man in the woods, it's that men don't understand how threatening a man is to women. And I think this comes up in situations of like abuse and domestic abuse as well, because I think that when women talk about, abusive exes and feeling afraid, other men don't really take that very seriously. Because they're like, well, is he punching you right now? Like, what is he doing to you right now? He seems fine. But women know how threatening men can be and how volatile men can be, and that abusive men don't just go away. They often, keep coming back. And sometimes you sort of think you've gotten away from them and they'll show back up again. And that they can really do anything that they want. Like, that's the point, is that they can choose to be around you or choose not to be around you, and you don't get a say, and you don't get a say in terms of what they do when they're around you, and it's unpredictable. And I think men are like, oh, okay, sure, like, you guys had a bad relationship and I'm really sorry that happened, but don't really understand what that experience feels like. Like, I don't understand what it feels like to really have no control over a situation or to be vulnerable in that way.
Yeah, I don't think men understand. I don't think they have any idea what women are negotiating, and that from the time we're entering puberty, we're really aware of the reality of male sexual violence that could come at us at any time. And yeah, like you said, with domestic violence, there's a huge amount of denial, even within public health, of how that is a leading cause of death of women of reproductive age. Like, that's always in the top 3 of the reasons women of reproductive age die. They're killed by current or former sex partners.
Yeah, and women know that, women, or any woman who knows anything about domestic abuse and abusive men know that, first of all, when they leave, they're even more vulnerable than they were when they're in the relationship. When they're pregnant, they're more vulnerable. And yeah, this is a leading cause of death and harm to women. And I guess, I think it might be confusing for men in some level, because women choose to be with men and they choose to be with these men. So not only do we choose to partner with men, but, we choose to partner with abusive men, and we stick around, or we don't leave, or we go back. And that sort of leads them to believe this isn't very serious, or, maybe you're exaggerating, or, maybe he just did this one time, like maybe he just made a mistake and now he's changed and he's cured.
He just tried to kill you once. That's normal. That's it's like just normal human behavior, right?
He just made a mistake. Oops.
Right.
Like, have you ever accidentally almost killed somebody or tried to kill someone?
No, I haven't made that mistake. I've not made the mistake of trying to kill somebody on purpose. Or even getting so out of control that I almost kill somebody. No, it's just not something I've done in my many mistakes. There's that observation of the comedy circuit of, there are countless examples of the crazy ex-girlfriend joke of how the, my ex is so crazy, she did all these things. And then the female comedians do not have an analogous crazy ex-boyfriend, routine that we see all the time, because women with a crazy ex-boyfriend are often dead.
Yeah. Well, I know I was listening to Megan Daum and, what is their live stream called? What is it called? Special Place in Hell.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Sarah Hayter. And they were talking about, I like both of them. I think they're both really smart.
Yeah, I like them too.
I was listening to them talk about this man versus bear thing. And I got the impression that because I think Megan referenced, okay, well, women can be kind of evil and crazy too, and really like detrimental. They concluded that, you know, it's like, yeah, women can be very crazy and evil and detrimental socially, which is totally true. There's lots of crazy women who are socially super destructive. But it's just not comparable. And you know, men and some women like to compare and to say, oh, well, you know, women abuse men too, or like you're just acting like all women are good and men are the only bad ones, which is of course not true. It's just that the stakes are so much higher when it's a crazy or dangerous or evil man. You know, like it's just so uncommon for a woman to abuse a man to the point where he's like actually afraid of her. You know, he might be afraid of her saying bad things about him socially, or maybe even accusing him of a crime that he didn't commit. You know, that did, you know, there were situations in Me Too that we saw where men were accused of rape when they didn't rape anybody, or accused of domestic abuse when they didn't abuse anybody, and their lives are ruined over it. So it's not unserious, but it's like the visceral and direct threat of a man who is abusive or sociopathic or narcissistic or dangerous is that like you could be dead. Mm-hmm. Like it's like it's like stop comparing these things.
You know, it's such an order of magnitude. It's you know, in intimate partner murder, fewer than 5% of those murders are committed by women. Like it's astronomically men who are killing women. And one thing that I notice a lot in the manosphere is when we talk about violence against women, men will point out, well, men are actually more likely to be murdered. And why don't you care about them? Men, you know, murder is the leading cause of death of young males. And my response is, yes, they're being murdered by other men. Like they're not being murdered by women. Like we're talking about male violence and how we all have to negotiate it. And if the men are upset about being murdered, they also need to address the culture-wide problem of male violence, because that's what's killing the men as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think what they're getting at is sort of fair, because it's like the realities that men face are really scary and dangerous. And it's like, and women will often or even only talk about the dangers to women, like the dangers that women face at the hands of men. And meanwhile, men have to like go to war, or they have to be the one to confront the bear in the woods to protect the woman, or the woman and the children, you know, that's expected of them, you know, confront the robber or whatever. And, you know, like I've heard lots of really sad and horrible stories of, you know, men who were really bullied when they were boys and were just like randomly beat up by gangs of dudes at the bus stop and stuff like that. Like it would also be scary to walk around as a man, especially, you know, as a boy in many contexts, and you are in danger and in a lot of circumstances. And I do think that it's important to acknowledge that, you know, like it's not like men walk around being safe all the time, but at the same time, you know, like men fighting other men is a different thing than a woman having to fight a man where she doesn't have a chance, and men do have a chance.
Right. I don't know any man who is afraid of encountering random other men on a walk.
Okay, fair. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
In the woods. Well, that's why they don't get it, because they're like, why would you be afraid of encountering a man in the woods? I encounter men in the woods all the time, and it's fine. Totally. Yeah. I mean, it does depend on the woods too, but yeah, it's just
the woods.
Well, because I mean, I go for what I was thinking about, like, because, you know, I bet a lot of these girls who are answering this question don't go on walks in the woods, or they're never alone in the woods. So they actually can't imagine what it would be like to encounter either a bear or a man in the woods. And I am alone in the woods quite often, because I'll go and, like, when I'm on the island, I'll take the dogs for walks in the woods, and sometimes I'll encounter men or women or two older women or families or whatever. But, you know, I'm not, I've never been in a scary situation, but at the same time, it's never like I've been in the depths of the wood alone. I have lived in a tent in the woods before and was scared both of men and of cougars.
Yeah. I was just thinking about cougars and how I'm
because
edgier about that than bears. I don't live in grizzly country. I'm not afraid of bears, even though I had one bother me in my tent like that. That was an unpleasant experience. It's really intense.
yeah.
But I've only like encountered a cougar once, and that was scary.
Oh
And I
God.
felt like it was stalking me a
I'm
little. Like I know it was
probably
like,
was stalking
I
you. Like if
know.
you're seeing a cougar, it probably saw you a long time ago.
Exactly. And I could smell it. The craziest thing was I could smell it. And then I turned, and it was up on this ledge, like above where I was. And I was like, oh shit. And they're like, what do you do? Like, I'm remembering all the things they tell you when you're a kid, like make yourself big, put your arms out, like get a stick, make a bunch of noise, like don't act like prey. And then I just didn't see it anymore, but I still could like kind of feel its eyes on me. And I don't know if I was just being paranoid, but that was creepy. But that was
Yeah.
still like less scary than the time my friend Jess and I encountered like a real sociopath in the woods who like had a knife and was like obviously crazy. And we were, I mean, that was nuts. Like we were trying to get to our car, and we both had like flipped our backpacks to the front to cover our vital organs. And we were out wildcrafting. I had a trowel, and Jess was like, here's the thing. If he lunges at us, I'm going first. She's much bigger than me. She's like, I'm going to knock him down, and then you go for his throat with the trowel. Like we had to like troubleshoot about this freaking psychopath he had a knife that he had duct taped to the end of a stick, like a spear.
Ew. Wait,
Yeah.
where was this and why?
It was in the woods in New Mexico.
You
We were out.
you were out walking. You randomly encountered a psychopath with a knife in the woods.
We were wildcrafting, and I was absolutely intent on getting this one particular herb that I only know there's one place. I mean, there are many other places, but my place is this place. And we go there, and there's like a camp there, and these dogs are running around, and Jess, who's very psychic, was like having a bad feeling. I'm like, look, we have to get the herbs. We'll get out of here. And this guy comes over, and he's talking to us, and he's like, go down this path. There's Osha, which is this really precious plant out here. There's Osha down there. You should go down there. Like he's trying to get us to go down this like really secluded path. We're like in the middle of nowhere. Like there's nobody around anyway, and no cell phone service. I was like, well, let's just gather up a bunch of the cleavers. And then he kind of disappeared, but his dogs were all around me. And I was like feeding his dogs. I had a breakfast burrito, and I was like, I'm going to make friends with these dogs. I'm giving these dogs like a bunch of like my eggs and sausage, just making friends with them, thinking I want these dogs to be on my side, not his. And then we head back to the car, and he's there, and he's headed down the path he told us to go down with this giant stick with a knife, like a hunting knife, a huge hunting knife, duct taped to the end of it. And he's got his back kind of toward us. And that's when Jess was like, here's our plan. Put your backpack in front of you, get the trowel in your dominant hand. If he comes at us, I'm going to go first, and then you're going to come with the trowel and kill him. And then we just have to get out of here. We got to go fast, and then we'll tend to our injuries once we're in safety. Like we had a whole plan. Luckily we got out of there. I kind of went psych nurse on it and was like talking him down as we're backing into the car, and then we just sped out of there. And then we get home, and the next day there's a report that a woman is missing in the same area.
Oh my God.
Yeah, we encountered like a murderous psychopath. Like for sure, he was a murderous psychopath because nobody else has a hunting knife duct taped to a stick.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, that was way worse. Like, wouldn't you rather run into a grizzly than that dude?
Yes.
Even a grizzly?
Yeah, I think I would. I mean, it's not a great choice to have to make, but I feel, but that's what I mean is that, people, you might be able to get out of a situation with a grizzly by doing anti-grizzly things. Same thing with a cougar. I mean, I feel like if I ran into a cougar in the woods, I would probably have a heart attack. But yeah, making yourself big, making a lot of noise, kind of being scary and hoping that it goes away.
I am not a prey animal. Right.
Yeah. So, but yeah, I don't, if I encountered a psychopathic man in the woods with a knife, that would be really at the top of my list of really terrifying things.
Yeah, it was really crazy. We still talk about it to this day of just how nuts that was, that like we could have just been murdered in the woods by this freaking psychopath.
Awful.